some financial literacy thoughts about making a personal budget, and also, so at the end of today's period, there is a future you case study. So you were sent a situation to your TDSB email. So please, review that. And then there's also a financial checklist of activities to do at home. So we want to be able to, at the end of this, understand basic concepts about how to invest money safely, and then also apply budgeting concepts to our own lives. How do you save money? Here's an example of Homer saving money, and it may or may not be the best idea.
Are you little? What the?
To get to the point where you have better financial habits than that. So why? Well, these are all the types of financial decisions you might face. Eventually you're going to buy a home, a house, a condominium. You might save for school. You might go back for a second degree. You might do a master's degree. Wanting to take a vacation, buying a car, just planning your expenses for a month, having enough money for an emergency in case there's a car accident or you become ill or something unexpected happens. Major purchases, having spending money, putting some money aside for investing, saving for your own children's education, starting your own small business, renovating your home. So all these types of decisions that we make in life, and it's very intimidating for a lot of people. Rondé Hollis Jefferson, who is involved a lot with youth basketball, just tweeted the other day that perhaps even high school should take algebra off the math curriculum for high school to save it for university, so that there could be more time devoted to financial literacy. Even people who have earned a lot of money are not immune to suffering from financial difficulty. Antoine Walker was drafted in 1996 and played over 10 years in the NBA and earned $110 million, but he explains here how he lost nearly all of that money.
Let's just begin for people that may not be familiar with your career and how it just, expanded into the world of professional sports in basketball. You were drafted.
It was big. I was able to work out a negotiation with the team to be able to get a big lump sum of my money up front, which usually doesn't happen. But I was, with the grace of God, I was able to do that, and I purchased my mom a home.
Okay, so you buy your mother a home, and you also help out other family members, don't you? And now you have a lot of very new friends.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of six, so it's 4 boys, 2 girls. I have 2 daughters of my own.
Congratulations.
And then obviously, I got family and friends who I'm very close with that grew up with me. So I usually ran with about 8 to 9 guys that kind of grew up in the same neighborhood and things with me. So I actually wanted them to see the same lifestyle that I was enjoying.
So what would be an example of something that you did at that younger age that you look back on now and say you just can't believe you spent the money doing that?
I would say a lot of exotic cars, jewelry. That I did. I had a car fetish when I was very young. I had 5 or 6 different cars, but I had the most expensive cars. When you're talking about Bentleys, Maybachs, Mercedes-Benz, so a lot of high-end things. I was into designer watches, Rolexes, timeless pieces that you can have forever. So I was into those type of things.
All right, that was what you were into. but you also paid for things for friends, didn't you? You went places, you went to Vegas. Tell us about that aspect of it.
Well, we went on lavish trips. I mean, we would go on vacation together. We would go to Cancun. We would go to Puerto Rico. We would go, different places. They played a huge part in me losing all my finances.
Okay, so you take those things, those three things, but now you take this idea that you want to share the story, you want to complete it, money runs out. What happened?
Well, it's a combination of things. I think one, what we just talked about, the lifestyle. I lost a significant portion of money gambling. I used to go to Vegas and gamble. I lost the bulk of my money investing in real estate. In which in 2007, 2008, we went through the recession. I'm sure this is a worldwide thing that we all went through. And I got caught up in that web, and that ultimately ended the bulk of my wealth. So you add those three things together, they played a huge part in me losing all my finances.
Okay, so you take those things, those three things, but now you take this idea that you want to share the story, you want to complete it because you're out of personal bankruptcy, and you've got a movie called Gone in an Instant. Tell us about the film.
Well, I wanted to come out and basically try to teach guys, not just necessarily athletes, but just people in general about having a lot of money. Sometimes different people come into wealth in different areas. So I wanted to share my story. Going through bankruptcy, I kind of got an opportunity to do that and see all the mistakes that I made. So I want to share those things, but also tell my story so people can see it as a learning example. Creating a foundation for finance literacy. I have a book coming out at the beginning of the year to talk about some of the.
Let's just begin for people that may not be familiar with your career and how it just
So there you go. He had some real estate investments. He ended up being into apartment complexes. He also had, a much bigger house than what he needed. Getting a basketball court for his mother's house. Things like that. That were not necessarily needed. Getting involved in gambling and having that kind of an addiction, and also wanting to live the lifestyle of having his expensive cars and jewelry. So when we talk about money management in this class, we want to avoid that type of situation. So we're talking about money management, daily financial activities that everyone needs to do to satisfy their needs and wants within a limited income. So everyone has a limited income, right? Even if you have a big salary, you can't spend more than that salary. And if you're fortunate to earn a lot, like Antoine Walker, you have a bigger budget than the average person, but you still have a budget, and you want to plan, save your money, and get the most out of it. You don't want to look down the line and say, hey, where did all my money go? So let me just take a moment now, pause before we get started on the activities. And how would you rate your money management skills? And if you do have, questions you want answered in class, send an email. We can discuss the questions, in a confidential way without mentioning anyone's name. And also in the Google form, there's an opportunity to submit a question that you would like answered in an anonymous way. So in Canada, Canadian households, for each dollar of disposable income, that is money that they have after taxes and deductions, they owe 171. So they owe, even if you said, okay, this month I'm just going to pay all my debt off, they can't do it. They owe more money than they are earning at the moment. And that's actually increased a lot in the last couple of years, and it was increasing before COVID-19. Actually, COVID-19 has knocked this number down a little bit as people have saved a bit more. And why are they in debt? Well, because of, some people are suffering small business closures or COVID-19 job losses, but primarily it's credit card debt, it's student loans, and when mortgages are involved, it really becomes huge. So as I mentioned, it actually has gotten a little better in 2020 because people have been able to save a little more. 50% of Canadians say that they're $200 away from not meeting their monthly bills. So obviously, once COVID-19 happened and so many people's businesses closed, or people lost their jobs, that could only get worse, and that has a huge mental health aspect on Canadians when they're so worried about paying their bills. It can be very detrimental for people's well-being. And then when you add mortgages, the loans people take out to purchase a house, The average new mortgage in Canada is $300,000, and if you add in all the mortgages Canadians owe together, just private Canadians, not businesses, $2 trillion.
What if something happens, the interest rates go up, and I can no longer afford my house?
There was a possibility to consolidate any loans that we may have already had with the car loan.
So that's a real challenge, is finding a good balance, something that a way of approaching money that's sensible.
We've been talking money all week as part of our CBC News series, Debt Nation. The Bank of Canada has just raised interest rates again, the fifth hike in the last year and a half, and that is only making warnings about Canadians taking on too much debt louder. Peter Armstrong is here to break it all down. Well, we heard a little bit of it there, Peter, whether it's car loans or mortgages. How deep is this debt hole?
It's pretty deep, Ian. And I mean, you look at the numbers, the statistics are eye-popping. For every dollar that we earn, Canadians owe $1.69. The average Canadian owes more than $23,000, and that doesn't even include mortgages. When you actually factor in mortgage debt, we owe a staggering $2.1 trillion. Remember, all those charts, all those numbers, those are people. Each one of those data points tells somebody's story.
Well, a series of misfortunate events led me into financial difficulties.
My addiction was credit cards.
In October of 2013, I was out of a corporate job.
I was in the middle of my maternity leave, and 5 days after my husband found out that his dad had passed away, my lung collapsed out of nowhere. It took almost a year and a half of going through this with no money besides EI, and eventually also at one point welfare when EI was up. When I called the Credit Counseling Society of British Columbia, I was in tears. It was Christmas time, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to pay the rent.
My highest debt was about $50,000. I'd max out my cards, and I would go to the bank at a consolidation loan and then have that consolidation loan to pay off, but then another bank would offer me a new card to help with that.
I was in hock to the tune of $140,000. I had 2 credit cards maxed right out and 2 lines of credit.
I'm not afraid to answer my phone anymore. It used to be that I had collectors phoning me left, right, and center.
I paid off about $45,000 of my debt, and that feels incredibly, there's no words.
I feel the situation I'm in now is transitional. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm on the path there.
You know, just hearing those stories, I find makes me feel a little bit anxious. At least they're optimistic. At least it looks like they're on the path to getting out of debt. But to what extent does that depend on the economy being strong?
That's a good point, because they're intimately intertwined. I mean, look back. Interest rates started going up, around 2017? So happens that's about the same time that the economy really started chugging along. And even now, 58% of Canadians told us that if their costs went up by more than $100 a month, they'd have to change their spending habits. So naturally, the central bank worries that, sure, things are good now, but what happens if things do start to slow down?
We're at the stage where, the economy is operating where it can. It's where it should be. And the question is, how much longer can it go? And the answer is, for a really long time, if nothing happens to mess it up.
Ian, that's about as optimistic as the central banker's ever going to get. We set out in all of this to try to find a tipping point. What would push this from concerns over debt to an actual debt crisis? And we found there's no one answer. It's not a single interest rate that suddenly changes everything. Debt's more like a fault line. It threads through everything else. No, Canada's not alone in this problem. And look at debt levels in Canada, how they compare to other countries. It's certainly not very pretty.
All right, Peter, thank you.
of people who have debt and how they feel about it, and sort of the idea of helplessness, one paycheck away from having difficulty, and just going through every aspect of their lives. So we really want to avoid this happening to you. So here's a graph that shows American consumers and how the loans divided by age group, and you can see that it's actually, middle-aged people have the highest loans. They have big student debts, they have mortgages. So that it's not just one. It's not just one issue. It's a little bit of credit card debt, it's a little bit of mortgage. In some cases, it's very, very big student loans that people had to take out. So you want to, develop a plan so that you can reduce how much debt you take on, and if you take on debt, pay it off. So why do we make purchases? Why are we buying all these things and putting them on our credit card? Well, sometimes it's like our income and price. Your Antoine Walker, and you got a big income, so you want to go buy a Maybach, to get that status. Get something that's trendy. Get something, because there's a promotion, just because it's your habit to buy it. You imagine if you took that money that you spent at Starbucks and put that into a savings account. You'd be starting now. You'd be saving, $3 to $6 a day, 30 days a month. That becomes, another $100, $200, per year. It's just with compound interest, things would add up. I'm not saying never have any fun, but you just want to think about it. When you're making a purchase, buy it because it's something that is really going to stand the test of time, not just because there was a sale or you wanted the status of it. So understand there's some things businesses do so that you actually buy more products. And one of those is reducing friction. So the idea of if you have a wallet and you take out your wallet and you take out the bills and you count them, you feel like you're spending money. You've seen that money change hands and you're aware of it. But they reduce friction by kind of quickening the purchase and eliminating the ability to have cash, like the one-click checkout on Amazon. It's done before you even realize it. On Indigo, you click quickly and it's already done. Having automated checkout counters, so you can quickly check out rather than wait in line and realize how much money you've spent. Tapping a debit card, credit cards, using apps. These are ways that they've reduced friction by eliminating money changing hands, and you don't realize that you've spent as much money. If you go to the grocery store and you see that, or even say like a Shoppers Drug Mart, and you see there's a big line at the cash, you might turn around and go back out and not buy anything. Whereas if you see you can just check it out quickly, then you're going to spend a bit more money. So building good habits. Well, pay yourself first. Saving lets you take advantage of compound interest. So, you get your interest, whatever it is that security is paying you. You get it, and then that interest stays in your account, and then the next month you get interest on the interest. So, for example, if we have having a security that's going to pay 10%, after 1 year I get $1.10 on every dollar that I've invested. Then the next year I get $1.21. Then I keep getting interest on interest. Now that's a high interest rate. That's not necessarily feasible, but in terms of me talking through the math, that's something more my speed. But the idea is, compound interest. You can pay yourself first. Don't pay all these other people. Don't pay all these corporations. Don't pay your friends. Pay yourself first, and then you can get that compound interest that'll help you, help your money grow. So we want to. Also, consider comparison shopping to review, which products offer which features, which ones do you really need. Schedule your purchases around sales, and maybe it's an opportunity to, you don't have to become an extreme couponer, but a little bit of planning might help you reduce your expenses. And then, self-control. So you ought to keep your receipts and go through your receipts. Make sure, that it matches what was taken out of your bank statement or your credit card. So, keep your receipts organized and have an understanding how much money was spent each month. When you get your bank statement once a month, reconcile it. Make sure there's no unusual charges. Just get an understanding of how much money went in and out of that account. Just go through every transaction. Okay, that's that one, that one, that one. Worst case scenario, I found Ticketmaster, for example, on some Raptors tickets has double charged me, and I had to, go. I was checking it through the app, and I said, "Hey, wait a minute, that was not the correct number." I had to call them, and they were not helpful. They were rude to me, and I had to call Visa and be like, "I'm disputing this charge," and they charged it back, and I got my money refunded. But if I had not been aware, I would have missed that opportunity. Try to reduce your impulse purchases. Set a budget and stick to it. Reflect on it afterwards. Was that a good idea or not? Understand if you have credit card debt and you don't pay it off, the annual percentage rate can get up to 20 to 24%. So you're not actually paying, $20 for an item. If you don't pay it off promptly, you're actually paying 25. And then imagine, if it was, $200 instead of 20. Or imagine it was, $2,000 a year in expenses. That kind of stuff can add up. So when you do buy things with credit cards, that's totally reasonable. You don't want to just be carrying cash around. Understand, it's important to make it a priority to pay it off, because with interest rates of 24%, that can be a very high cost. An emergency fund. A lot of Canadians say they don't have an emergency fund. 1/3 of Canadians say they don't have one, and half of them say they would struggle with an emergency of $400. That could be car repairs. That could be like the refrigerator breaks. That could be you miss a few days of work because you're sick. You could be, some accident happens to your family member. Anything like that. You want to. It's recommended to have a rainy day fund of 3 months of expenses, of job loss. Not to say that you'd get fired, but the company could go out of business. A lot of people in 2020 were doing great jobs, great work as, servers or working in the service industry, and then the business just went under and it wasn't up to them. So, keep a rainy day fund of that extra money. Some people will need to put it in a separate account so they don't touch it. Other people know that, hey, that last 500, that last 1,000, that last 1,500 in my bank account is my rainy day fund. So creating a personal budget. You can do your budgets, can be weekly, monthly, annually. Some people avoid budgeting because they don't want to look at the numbers, or they think it will limit the fun that they can have, or that it's too complicated. But it's not as bad as you think, and it can help you, save. It can help you, determine the right amount of discretionary purchases so you can enjoy yourself, and it can help you find the right job to suit your lifestyle. If you want a certain lifestyle, you want to understand, hey, you need this annual salary to afford that. So when you look at your budget, you're going to see some key terms. So the first thing is your salary before deductions, your gross income. And so people know what their salary is. But then there's deductions in Canada. There's taxes, there's provincial taxes, there's federal taxes, there's the Canadian pension plan, there's employment insurance, and they're deducted by the employer. They appear on your pay stub, and so you're never going to get your full salary when you work for a company. There's going to be deductions, and then what you actually get is your disposable income, the amount of money left over. So if you look at a pay stub, you'd see that your salary, and then you'd see taxes. Once you're turning 18, you're going to have all these deductions, so that's going to take a chunk out of it right away. We call it disposable income because that's what's available to spend. Your salary, it's not all available to spend because the government has a claim on it. Now, always file your taxes, because usually they overcharge the deductions, and if you file your taxes, you'll get a refund. But you don't get that refund until you file your taxes. And then lastly, discretionary income, the amount of money that you can spend on wants of your own desire and choice after the necessities have been paid for. So there's going to be some rent, there's going to be some food, there's going to be some transportation, some clothes, some things you can't get around. So again, your gross income is your salary, then there's deductions. Disposable income is what you have available to spend, but there's going to be some needs to take care of first, and then what's finally left over is your discretionary income, and that's what you can choose to save from or spend on yourself. Here's an example of a personal budget. So we got the person's gross income, we take out their deductions, and we get their disposable income, and add up all the expenses. So cars, insurance, personal items, clothing, house expenses, things like that. You add up all the necessities, and then what's left over is their discretionary money. And then at the end, they don't have anything left over. That's fine. Some people might choose to leave a little and then put that money into investments. Here's what a business budget would look like. It's kind of the same thing. We've got revenue, and then so a store, they have to pay for the goods that they're selling. We call that cost of goods sold. So they get revenue, but actually, $7,000 is responsible for paying for the goods that they sold you. And then they have their gross income, and then there's some expenses. To keep the store operating, trucks, advertising, wages, rent on the building, things like that. So even though they might have collected $25,000, they got to pay for all the goods they sold, they got to pay to keep the business running, and their net income is actually much smaller than their revenue. So we got a regular personal budget, business budget, similar items. Be neat and organized. See, look at how neat this is. You got, a nice, everything's in a nice column. It's very easy to follow and very easy to add up. So you can use Google Sheets to do this, and I got a video for that that you can watch for more detail. Here we again, make the budget easy to read, and you can look at it at a glance. So, here we have, Fred Van Fleet's budget. In the inner column, they have the things that we're totaling up. So we take all the deductions, we total them up. Okay, so although he made $1,250 that month, only $900 was disposable. Then out of that, he committed to $625 of disposable income, and then so that left $275 for his discretionary income, and he was able to save $175. So that's a good amount. People trying to save like 15%, 20%. That's for younger people. That can be a good goal. And you might find that Google Sheets is helpful because you can make an easy pie chart, and each month compare the pie chart, and it visualizes it. Not everyone likes looking at a big spreadsheet. So for some people, taking the time to make a pie chart helps them visualize the budget and understand where all that money went. You can watch this video on your own time. So personal goal setting, they help people save major expenses because you visualize that I am going to buy a house, I am going to go to school, I am going to take my big vacation to Europe. Whatever it is, you visualize it, it's feels more satisfying than just I'm saving for some unknown purchase. Keep the goals private. You don't have to tell everyone what you're doing, and you want to have a mix of short-term goals. Like, again, we don't want life to be boring and miserable. We want a mix of, enjoying life, but also meeting our long-term obligations and avoiding those difficulties that beset Antoine Walker. Try to save a minimum amount each month. And if you have to create a second savings account, checking account is where the money, that goes in and out, that when you tap your debit card, it comes in and out of your checking account. The deposits go in, your expenses and e-transfers go out. There's a lot of transactions happening there. Savings account tends to be you save it and it grows and grows and grows, and you don't touch that as much. If you need to do a separate savings account to keep that money separate because you're a little undisciplined, if you have to go to a second bank, you do your primary banking with a TD or an RBC or a big bank, but you decide your savings company will be with Tangerine or another company just to keep things separate, and you have an automatic withdrawal or something to that effect, but you don't want to touch it. That might be a tool you need to do if you don't trust yourself. It's up to you. So although we know that we should save, we don't often do it. Things happen. Things don't work according to our plans. So Shlomo Bernardzi gave a TED talk that talks about some of the challenges that people experience when they try to save. And when maybe if you watch that, you get an idea of what could happen to you and plan for it. So if you want to look at that TED talk and understand why savings can be challenging, it might give you some background information. And so that is our introduction to financial literacy.